What's up, guys? Welcome back to Strength 101. I'm Matraca.
And I'm Nick.
And we are here today to debunk fitness myths because, man, do these get me going.
Yeah, we got, a list of 10 of them?
Yeah.
And I think I probably at one time or another half believed most of these. You just don't know, especially when you're younger. The internet's kind of sometimes a dumpster pile of information, and it's really, really hard to sort through. So I'm stoked to get into some of these. Some of these are will completely change the way you think about nutrition and weightlifting.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Number one that we have is free weights are better than machines. Right off the bat, that can be far from the truth. Granted, at Strength Academy, we do use free weights, and we talk about all the time that we wish that we had machines.
Yeah, I think that there's this everything's a fad in the fitness industry, right? It's like everybody, especially with the advent of CrossFit over the last decade or two now, or however long that's been around, everybody got really psyched about this idea of functional fitness. I've always had a problem with that term because I'm like, what the heck does functional mean? If your body can do it, isn't it functional? It's not.
Yeah, good point.
Find me a list of what functional exercises are, and I'm having a hard time thinking of exercises that you don't include in that. I feel like there's people out there that would argue a bicep curl is not a functional movement. And it's well, I can lift a beer to my lips and that's a bicep curl, And so, I don't know. I just think the whole argument is kind of silly. But to your point, there's a lot of people out there because of that fad that believe that if you're not training with free weights, and what we define free weights as are barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, anything that's not attached to something or not a machine, just kind of weights that are free in space, that those are just superior, whether that's for burning fat or building muscle or whatever, to machines. And it's a bunch of hogwash, right? When you first started training, did you just stick to free weights?
Oh, God, no. I was terrified of free weights, honestly. I went and I used machines, and that, I think, made quite a difference for me because, A, I could learn how to isolate my muscles more and I could feel what I was working. And two, what was really nice about the machines as a newbie is they show pictures of how to use the machine. So if you go in there and you're not quite sure what you're doing, at least you can refer to that picture.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I was when I first I had done, tons of free weight stuff with sports, but then when you go into a gym for the first time and you're kind of intimidated that you're going to be the one doing it wrong, or who, when they first start lifting, wants to go over and start bench pressing and look silly because they either can't lift enough or they're not really sure if their technique is correct, when you could hop on a machine and just some of those machines, just the way they're built, you're almost kind of hidden anyways, so you can't make eye contact with people. And you can build tons of muscles using the machine. If you really want to know whether something's effective or not, look at the people who are professionals at it. And so if you look at professional bodybuilders, and to a certain extent, strength athletes too, strongmen, power lifters, they use machines. That might not be, for some of them, their primary lifts that they do, but they use tons of machines for accessory lifts to activate muscle groups that are hard to activate or isolate movement patterns that are really difficult to do. A good example for me is when we coach incline bench press, all the time we're trying to get people to feel it in their upper pecs, but there's so many different variations that you can have with your elbows and your shoulders when you're working with kettlebells or dumbbells or even a barbell, that you might not actually get the activation in the upper pec that you want. Whereas if you get me on an incline press on a machine, it's got one angle.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna feel it every single time. And so, especially if you wanna build muscle and you wanna actually build shape on things that are hard to build, why wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I would even argue it's great as a safety, newbie or not. That, it's just a great safety point too, even if you're a little nervous in the gym or whatever it might be. But
100%. Let's say somebody's coming off an injury.
Yeah.
And you're just gonna say oh yeah, let's throw a barbell on your back, even though you're still kind of nervous about your knee. Or we could lock you into a leg press and you just feel that much safer. That goes for injured populations. It goes for older populations too. If you're trying to work on range of motion and your body doesn't feel stable, then it doesn't feel safe. And if it doesn't feel safe, it won't allow you to go to certain ranges of motion. So there's a good argument that if, the one that gets a lot of hate is the Smith machine.
Oh, yeah.
And the Smith machine, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, is the barbell in the rack that has the gliders that guide the barbell up and down and assist it. And people hate on that machine all the time. But if you're squatting, whether it's from an injury or you just don't have good range of motion and your body has to dance in space, it might not ever let you go below parallel. Whereas you lock yourself into that, maybe you can finally get yourself into depth and get your muscles working.
And that it's also a great intro into if you wanted to work on like a free weight barbell eventually, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a perfect machine for it.
Yeah. And these are all tools. Like everything in the gym, like we don't discriminate against certain types of exercises. And I think that's the worst thing you can do, whether you are just a lifter or you're a coach, is if you just niche yourself into one thing. Everything's a tool that can be used to solve the problem. And so whether that's muscle activation, getting through injury, any of the things we just talked about, use the tool that works best and don't be a zealot about it.
Absolutely. So know that free weights and machines are equal.
Yeah. Just what's the right tool for the job.
Yep, absolutely. Okay.
Awesome. 1 down.
1 down, 9 to go. Okay. 2, I want to target a specific spot in my body for fat loss.
Yeah. What do you see this the most with?
I absolutely see this the most with like, I want to get rid of fat I have on my tummy. So I'm going to, do
tummy.
abs and or your stomach, your tummy, whatever.
Tum-tum.
Tum-tum?
Yeah.
So you do abs or whatever you can just to focus on your stomach or your tummy, thinking that you're going to lose.
I've got you thinking too much about your word choice.
No, I was just saying it just to give you crap back. But that's where I'd say I see it the most is everyone just wants to lose stomach fat, but that's just not at all the case of the target at all.
All the time where they're like, hey, we get requests from people at the gym, hey, can we do more abs because I want to lose fat on my stomach.
Yeah.
And it just simply isn't the way the body works. You don't get to decide that. And the example I always use is like if that was a true thing, if you could target fat loss and you could actually just do a bunch of ab work and get a shredded six-pack, then we would see people walking around with fat arms and legs and a shredded six-pack. And I've never seen that.
That would be crazy.
Never have I ever seen that. Or people, a lot of, especially women, because women carry more fat on their triceps than men do.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, can we work out our triceps more because I've got this kind of lunch lady jiggle going on. And it's like, well, that's just fat and the body loses fat in its own way and it's different between individuals. And yes, we can grow your triceps, but that body, we can't choose what comes off first.
For sure.
And often, I would say that like when people go through weight loss phases, it just seems like the thing that you want to lose body fat around the most is like the last thing that goes.
Oh, absolutely. That's always how it is.
And it is like, there's differences between men and women, but we preferentially, like the last thing to go is usually the front of the stomach fat, especially lower on the abdomen. And then for women, especially around the hips, the butt, kind of like the cellulite on the legs, that stuff tends to stick around until the end. And I think that you just have to relieve yourself of that stress of like, it's not your responsibility to try to target those areas. Like, the way, why don't you talk about like how fat loss happens generally? So that people understand like that this isn't the way it works.
Yeah. Well, even in our previous episode where we talked about like going into a calorie deficit, which is going to be eating less than you're burning, that's going to be your spot where you're going to be wanting to lose weight, right? Sure, still in a calorie deficit, you're not going to be targeting your specific spots in your body for fat loss, but that's the way to start to actually become able to lose fat.
Yeah. And we see it all the time. Like, well, where do you get shredded first? Do you know?
My legs.
Your legs.
I'm someone specifically too that's like, oh dang, I wish that I could lose stomach fat even when I'm in a calorie deficit. But for sure, that's the last thing to go, at least on my body. And I think a lot of people relate with that.
Yep, 100%. That's the same thing for me. It's like it always comes off of my stomach last. I think it's most people. But like if I start cutting immediately, like I actually carry it on my back a decent amount too. Like not my upper back. My upper back kind of stays shredded if I'm a little bit higher body fat, but the kind of love handle area is definitely like something that doesn't get shredded unless I'm like really, really low body fat. So I don't know. I just think you can relieve yourself of that responsibility and know that there's no way for you to do it. So if you're only doing arms and abs because you think that's going to lose fat in your target areas, you're not. And you'd be better off just picking a version of exercise that you actually enjoy and just letting the process happen how it happens.
For sure. Yeah. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Easy. Well, perfect. Well, number 3, I feel like I hear this one far too often. Deadlifts are bad for your back. Okay, you know what's actually bad is doing incorrect form. Not the deadlifts, it's your form. Point blank period.
Yeah, 100%. So now, like, obviously, the lower back is significantly involved in the deadlift, and it's in a position to take on a lot of load. So I think the deadlift is just the culprit. Like plenty of people hurt their backs doing other things. So you can hurt your back doing lunges. You can hurt your back doing sit-ups. You can hurt your back definitely doing squats or any of those things. But deadlifts are one of those things where people like to lift heavy. It becomes very much an ego movement. And I think the classic example of this is like somebody who thinks deadlifts hurt their back, but in reality, their upper body is decently strong, their lower body is decently strong, but their lower back and their core generally is kind of the weak point of that. And just because your legs can press it off the floor doesn't mean you're not deviating your lower back, and then you get hurt because it was just the weakest link in the chain. Because we do tons of isolated glute exercises, leg exercises, upper body, back exercises, but we just don't do enough stuff for the lower back to prep it for those heavier weights. And so, like the way that you would fix that, let's say you're somebody who every time you get above 300 pounds on a deadlift, you tweak your back for some reason. Really the way to train that is to think about, I need to make my back stronger, not avoid it, because that will, like if you avoid strengthening your back, weak shit breaks, right? So you're just gonna set yourself up for more injuries in the future. The way you would wanna fix that is, okay, I still wanna deadlift and I don't wanna hurt my back when I get over 300 pounds. So I'm gonna do more repetitions, check my ego. I'm gonna get stronger at lower weights so that my back has time to strengthen up, and maybe put in some targeted back exercises like, the 45-degree extension bench, and doing stuff like that, and making sure you're doing plenty of core exercises.
I was going to say
and then
core
just
for sure.
When you get that inkling to reach for that extra 20 pounds or 50 pounds when you know it's dicey, you just don't do it.
Yeah, it is passing the ego point. That's a really good spot to hit. That ego lifting, especially in deadlifts, are real.
Yeah, and to the technique point that you made too, like, on deadlifts and squats, your back is pretty safe in a number of different positions. I think we tell ourselves we have to lock into a really flat back position all the time. There's people, and the best example is strong men who lift Atlas stones, right? You ever see somebody, like they get curled over on it, their back is completely rounded, and they're picking up 400 pounds off the ground. And they're rolling it up. And, yes, they might hurt their back sometimes, but if it hurt your back every time you lifted with a rounded back, they would never do that exercise. And the reason it works is if you lock your core in and you tighten around your back in any position and it stays like that, it's likely fine. It's when it moves under load that it becomes an issue. And so most people hurt their back because they start to deadlift and then their back rounds in the middle of the deadlift. Or they start to squat and they don't have good mobility, or they loosen up and in the bottom they tuck their butt under, and all of a sudden their back bends with 300 pounds on your back. And then those exercises get the culprit when really it's technique, and I never really trained my back, and it's just the weak thing that's getting picked on.
Right, for sure. Back, core, technique, boom.
Boom. Build a strong back. Break shit. Weak shit breaks. Break shit weaks. Weak shit breaks.
Oh. Number 4, we've all heard this. Carbs are bad for you, or that carbs make you fat. This just makes me mad even hearing it. Yeah.
I live off carbs.
Yes.
I eat massive amounts of carbs.
Carbs is like the main source of energy that your body takes in. Okay, so like we all need carbs. Cutting them out is doing nothing but actually like worsening or like hurting you. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, especially from a performance perspective, because your muscle's preferred form of fuel is glucose. It's really fast to get out of the bloodstream into your muscle. So whenever you're lifting weights, if you have glucose running in your system, you just have more energy available. Your performance tends to be better. We see this all the time when people come in and they're fasted, and their blood glucose is low when they start training. Their body doesn't have that extra reserve to go to right away, and they might get lightheaded, because it's not only your muscles that prefer glucose, glucose is just carbohydrates broken down. It's your brain that prefers glucose. And so if you cut out carbs, you're asking for a world of hurt if you like to train a lot, because you're gonna get foggy headed, you're likely gonna get dizzy a little bit, you may deal with some blood pressure issues, and your muscles are just gonna feel this deep, deep fatigue that is just not enjoyable. And so telling yourself that that's going to help you lose fat just because you're doing that, and then suffering through every workout you do, I think is very counterintuitive. And also because you were just talking about how we actually lose weight, it's just not true, right? Because what does it come down to? It's total calories.
Total calories. Well, because I was going to say with that, like carbs don't make you fat. What makes you fat is overeating. So like eating more than what your body's burning, right? So that wouldn't be carbs. That'd be eating everything in a surplus would be making you overweight.
Yeah.
Not just the carbs.
And there's plenty of people that have gone on like a ketogenic diet, right? And
Yes.
they completely cut out carbs. And every diet, there's examples of people it works for and people it doesn't. And it's like, yes, the people who cut out carbs entirely and it took their total calories down enough for them to break down fat, that works. But then there's people that cut out carbs entirely and then they just find a way to overindulge on fat and protein and they don't lose any weight.
Right.
And so like the body doesn't discriminate, it just loses fat based on an energy basis. And so to demonize carbohydrates is just making your life harder. Carbs are tasty. Like why would you take that out of your life?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to live that life.
You're literally being counterintuitive because you want to be healthy thinking you're cutting out carbs. You're actually not being healthy. You're like, that's not, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and I think there's like for the brainiacs out there who really dive into this stuff, one of the biggest myths out there is that like if you know when you eat carbs, you're spiking insulin, and that insulin promotes fat gain or storage of fat, which is technically true, but that's a body system that you can't ignore. And if you are in a total calorie deficit, you're actually eating low enough calories to lose fat. It's not going to matter whether you spike your insulin. Yes, your body will promote fat storage and promote driving carbs into the muscle at that point. But then over the course of a 24-hour period, let's say when you sleep, if you were in a calorie deficit, your body's going to go back to that catabolic state and it's going to break down fat. And so total energy is the model. I kind of got nitty gritty there, but I know that's like an argument that a lot of people who get deep into this are like, that's why carbs are bad for you.
So Nick got you on that.
I got you. Yeah. Or I just confused you.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah. High risk, high reward.
All right, so please eat your carbs. Again, point blank period on that as well. This one's actually probably one of my most favorite. I think we've talked about this in the past, but lifting makes you bulky. No.
No.
No. So often in the gym, I'll have people come up to me and say, hey, I want to like get toned. Okay, well, how do you get the toned look? You need to have muscle on your body, and then you need to go into a calorie deficit. If you do not have muscle on your body and you go into a calorie deficit, you are not going to look toned. You are going to get the skinny fat look.
Yeah.
So bulkiness is just not real. If you want shape to your body and you want to have muscle and have muscle definition, bulkiness is not it. It's what it is the definition and the fit look that you're looking for, the toned look.
And you have to be like a total genetic freak to put on muscle fast enough that it's like I look at a weight and I look bulky. And I'm not saying there aren't people, like my sister is a good example, Christina, you've met Christina.
Yeah.
Big legs run in our family, and so she claims that like she looks at a weight and her legs grow. And it is kind of like that. As soon as she starts training, like her legs are like get thicker, but that's also like, that's just her genetically.
An genetic.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, some people are you know, drooling over like those gains. But, you know, I've been trying to make myself too big for freaking 20 years now, and I'm not too big.
Yeah.
And so if you have that talent where you pick up the weights a few times and all of a sudden you're just jacked and shredded, well, like, man, you should just become a professional bodybuilder and take advantage of that and not cry about it.
Well, and see, true. And I think pointed with that is, like I remember when I started lifting, my dad was like, "Oh, you don't want to look manly." I'm like, "Do you understand how it looks or how hard it is to look manly? Like, sure,
really
these bodybuilders you might look at and you might think that, but it's not like that happened overnight. That took years and years and years and dedication, and so much work goes into that besides just lifting, right? So I just think people don't understand that the bulkiness really isn't real, and if you really wanted to look like that, it would take a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, and shape. Like, okay, let's say, and I don't know, I mean, you might have been like this when you were younger, like, because I've seen some photos of you and you're pretty stick thin. But let's say you're somebody who has a shape that, or like you have a body that just has no shape, right? Like you're just one of those people who is built straight up and down. Like your shoulders are the same size as your waist, as your hips, as your thighs.
My mom calls them brick shit houses.
Brick shit houses, yeah. So like if, let's say you're born with that, or you're just genetically, you have kind of a thicker abdominal wall so that like your stomach doesn't like go in like the Sports Illustrated models. The only way for you to get like proportion and shape that kind of you desire of like looking like thin in the waist is to stack muscle on your shoulders, your back so that your lats are a little bit bigger, and then your legs so that you start to get this V shape or this X shape, right? Where it's like proportionally, if somebody were to see you from afar, if you have wider shoulders, even though you might not want them to get bigger, look-wise, the wider shoulders and back that comes down into the waist and then goes out into the glutes and quads, That's just like sociologically an attractive look. Like that's proven. And the only way to get there, if you actually have a thicker abdomen by nature, is to put muscle on your shoulders and your legs. So don't be scared of it.
Yeah, embrace it. Have fun with it.
Yeah. or at least try it, right? It's like, if you're scared that you're going to get bulky, then go to the gym just go into the gym and lift your butt off. And guess what? If you start to get too bulky, you can just stop. But like, I guarantee you're going to be in there for several years chasing that goal.
Yeah, and it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. And you'll probably just like the way you look when you're done.
Yeah, even better. All right. So next one, eating protein within 30 minutes, like post training or post weight training.
Yeah. The anabolic window.
There you go, the anabolic window.
Yeah. You
You
want me to go?
Yeah.
So like this is especially in like kind of the meathead part of our industry is like, if I don't eat X amount of protein, pick your number because it's different in every article. If I don't eat 20 grams or 30 grams or 50 grams of protein within a half an hour after lifting or an hour after lifting, I'm gonna negate my gains. There is some truth and there is some falsity to this. Like, first off, your body doesn't operate on such an acute cycle that like if you were to just not eat at all for an hour after your training, that you were gonna like reduce your gains. Your body operates off of a system where it's like, if me and you go into the gym and we lift heavy weights, we're breaking down the muscle, and then it's gonna take a much longer period to repair that. Let's call it 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that. And as long as you get that muscle recovered, it's gonna grow back bigger and stronger. The only way that you actually run the risk of like completely reducing your gains is if you didn't eat for like 24 or 48 hours, or if you were just such low body fat that because you didn't get that protein in an hour after, your body has no choice but to start eating your muscles for fuel. But unless you're like a professional bodybuilder and you're shredded to the bone, you don't have to worry about this. So if there's like stress going into your life because you didn't get your protein shake in an hour and it took you 2 hours before you were able to stop and eat, like, you're stressing yourself out for no reason.
Right, because with that, like, your body doesn't know the time. Like, it doesn't know how long it's been since you trained. It's not going to be like, oh my gosh, it's been 3 hours. I can't even utilize this protein.
No gains for you.
Yeah. Screw you.
There is something to take advantage of there, though. Like, so like when people talk about that anabolic window, your body does upgrade protein synthesis. So like if you get protein in within an hour after a workout, it is going to more effectively drive that protein into the muscle to start the recovery process. So you can definitely take advantage of that. And also, like, the one thing that we can't speed up about recovery is time. One of my favorite Warren Buffett quotes is, you can't get a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. Some things just take time. And muscle recovery just takes time. So yes, technically, if I were to wait 5 hours after my workout before I get protein in, then I have delayed the recovery process, and maybe I'm not going to feel as good if I try to train 24 hours later. But especially if you're training every other day or something, and you're not training crazy hard, like, it's not worth the stress to, like, force yourself into habits that are hard for you.
Right. Oh, for sure. And I mean, just honestly focusing on protein in general throughout your day, right, is going to make a huge difference for your gains on muscle and sleep. But I know that's a whole different topic on our myth debunking, but 2 points to add.
Yeah. What you got?
Oh, you want me to read the next one?
Sure. Or I can read some. I don't know.
7, if you aren't sweating, it isn't a good workout.
Yeah. You take this one.
I'll take this one. This is absolutely far from the truth, because there's plenty of exercises you'll be doing that are extremely effective for your body, and you might not just sweat as much. And that is okay. Some of us aren't much of sweaters compared to others. Nick sweats his ass off. I don't.
Yeah. And it's like, well, why does your body sweat?
I don't even really know.
Just gets overheated, right?
Okay,
so it's
fair.
like you could, and this was very obvious to me when when I grew up in the Midwest, and then when I moved out to Colorado for the first time, I remember I did a workout like 2 days after I moved there, and I didn't sweat at all. And I was like kind of freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, am I sick? Am I dehydrated? What the heck's wrong with me? Did I not work very hard? But it's dry out there. It's not humid.
Yeah.
And so like, if sweat was the only thing that mattered as far as for fat loss or defined a good workout, well, it's like we should all be in a sauna, working out, or we should all work out in the most humid climates. And there's plenty of people that live in arid climates, that are cold and they never sweat, and they are jacked and they are shredded.
Yeah.
And so it's just, your sweat is just your body losing water. It doesn't have anything to do with fat loss.
You see?
It's kind of ridiculous.
No, it is.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I was thinking about how the difference from you from the climate change. I feel like that would have been like a crazy
Yeah.
shock to the body a little bit.
Yeah, and then my parents still lived in Illinois, so then I came back in the summer and I just like got out of the car and started sweating. I'm like,
sweating.
oh, I still sweat.
Yeah,
like,
thank God.
But like, yeah, I'm like, it's not like I feel like I'm dripping fat off just being in humidity.
Right.
I trained a friend for her wedding a few years ago, and we had done this remotely. And one of her comments to me was, she was like, for the first couple weeks that I did your workouts, I was really concerned that I wasn't going to get results because I wasn't sweating near as much as when I had done treadmill work and cardio stuff before.
Yeah.
But luckily she had stuck with it because she's a huge advocate for our programming now, and she lives here now too. But Leah, I don't know if you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, but she said, like, I was shocked that I wasn't sweating during my workouts because I stuck to longer rest times and just the strength training like I had told her to. She's like, but then like my arms look better than they ever had, and I got better results than I ever had, and I didn't feel like I had sweaty workouts and I wasn't huffing and puffing, but I still got results. And it's like, well, isn't that kind of what we're all looking for?
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have to be drenched and I didn't have to be exhausted and I can be jacked.
Yeah. That sounds
That's
like
a perfect world.
Yeah.
It's the perfect world.
I think that's a good point as you say that, because like right now here in Wisconsin, it is currently like -17.
Yeah.
And granted, sure, it could be a little bit warmer in the gym, but like we're for sure not sweating nearly as much as we would with the doors open in the middle of the summer here. So it is back to the overheating aspect, and to like, just because we're not sweating as much in the winter, like we are still getting just as good as a workout if we were in the summer. And quite honestly, as you said, a lot of times if I'm like sweating too much, like I'm more uncomfortable than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's not as.
Or if you get too overheated, you're just to get exhausted.
Yeah, and you're not pushing yourself as you would as much.
So sweat equity is bullshit.
Light weights at high reps for toning. I'm gonna have you start on this one.
We just hear this one all the time. Like people say, and it's very much related to whether lifting makes you bulky. Light weights at high reps to get toned muscles. The body doesn't really work this way, so I think a lot of people, and I would say, mostly females too, are more concerned with like, can I get a toned look without looking like too muscular or too bulky? Mm-hmm. You can definitely build muscle using lighter weights and higher reps. But I would argue, the issue I have with this statement is light weights, because it is next to impossible to put muscle mass on if you don't have heavy enough weights in hand. If you don't challenge the muscle enough, it is not gonna grow. And so let's say I picked up to do bicep curls, and like we could try, it would be awesome to do an experiment of this where we measured somebody's arms. Like let's say me and you decided we were gonna do arms for like 8 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And we measured our arms, and you did light weights and high reps. Let's call it like, you're gonna pick up 5-pound weights, like the little colored ones that people like to use at home. And you did like 20 reps on your arms every single time, regardless of whether it actually pumped you up or challenged you.
Sure.
And then if I did like 10 reps with heavy weights, I can guarantee you my arms would grow so much faster than yours. And that's what we're really looking for when we're talking about muscle tone. Muscle tone is simply, did I grow the muscle enough to actually see the shape of the muscle? And do I have low enough body fat so it's not covering up that shape of the muscle?
You can see it.
And so when you boil it down to it, it's just about muscle growth. And if your weights are too light, you're never gonna grow muscle. So you're not, yes, you are avoiding getting bulky, but you're also avoiding the results of getting that toned look. And so you're much more likely, you can use high repetitions to gain muscle, but I always say it's moderate weights. It still has to be challenging. When you get to the end of a set of 15 reps, or 20 reps, you should feel like you couldn't do any more. If you know you could have done 30 reps or 40 reps, the likelihood that you sent a signal to the muscle that says it has to get bigger and stronger and grow is next to nothing. Sure. It's just not happening.
Right.
Yep.
I would even add to that, like you saying bicep curls that popped in my head. Like, okay, if I were to go grab a 15-pound dumbbell and I'm pumping it up for bicep curls. To be honest with you, for me, that's a lot, especially for a specific amount of reps. Now, if I were to do squats or something, 15 would not be enough. So remember to tailor it towards what muscle group you're using, because it's not always going to be the same, obviously, weights, but it's still to the point, Nick, that like you need to push yourself to more of a heavier weight rather than just going through the motion on it, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a really good point, because like especially for bigger muscles, like if you want to grow your legs, or let's say like you're somebody who's like, I want toned legs, and I'm just gonna do body weight stuff all the time. Like sure, you may get a little bit of shape to your legs initially if you were like untrained and then you started training, But if you actually want to get a toned look, you have to grow muscle. And legs are big muscles. They're strong muscles. So having like a 10-pound dumbbell that you're just doing sumo squats with is probably not really going to touch you. It doesn't matter how many reps you get. And the perfect example of this is low weight, high reps is a cross-country runner, right?
Yeah.
They do constant reps. Like they're endurance monsters. Like nobody does more reps on their legs and their calves than a long distance runner, a cross country runner, yet they are scrawny, right? Because you can't get significant, your body doesn't grow muscle until you get above a certain threshold on load. So when you are choosing how much weight you should use for certain exercises, whether you're training high rep or low rep, this is why we always push people to say, train close to failure.
Yep.
If you're training in strength segments where you're down at like 8 reps and below, we always teach people to go until they feel like they could have done 1 or 2 more maybe, but they might have been messy reps. And then we know you got close. We don't want to take them completely to failure on heavier exercises because there's an injury risk. But if you are doing something like bicep curls or lateral raises and you want to do 15 or 20 reps, you should basically push that until you just want to drop the weights because it either burns so much or you just can't lift your arms up that high anymore.
For sure.
Yeah, and so you have to kind of gauge it by what is actually difficult for your muscles.
And that's different for everyone, right? But don't make it too easy on yourself because you're not going to get those gains.
Yeah.
All right, no pain, no gain. How often have you heard this? Because I feel like I've heard this far too much. I think it actually goes back to what you just said. Like no pain, no gain. I think about like you're pushing yourself so dang hard that you can't go any farther in each and every workout. Like pushing yourself to failure every single time. This actually goes back a little bit more even to the recovery piece because if you're doing that, 1, you're really not getting anything out of it. You're just pushing yourself to a potential injury. 2, you're not giving yourself any time to recover. And 3, like you're literally, I don't want to say ruining your body, but you're just giving more of a negative than you are more of a positive.
There's always a relationship between how much stress you can put on your body and then how much rest and recovery you need from that. So I think there's an argument that you can train really hard if your recovery is freaking optimal and you're resting long enough between sessions. But I don't think that's what a lot of people do when they have this no pain, no gain mentality. It's this mentality that, okay, when I'm going through a workout, if I'm not dead on the floor afterwards, I didn't get enough out of it. And you can overtrain yourself by doing that and increase your risk for injury. Or it's somebody saying, I trained yesterday, but I'm not sore today, so it clearly did nothing for me.
Yeah.
And so some people will train themselves into such crazy soreness as much as possible that they just are like stiff and walking around. And if you don't really let yourself recover, like you're gonna go into a set of deadlifts stiff because you trained yourself so hard 2 days ago that now you're going to injure yourself because your body's stiff and you're trying to get it to pick up loads.
And guess what? It's still not the deadlifts problem.
It's you. Not the deadlifts problem. Yes. Oh, man, how did that circle back around? But yeah, I think there's a point to the no pain, no gain thing because like, let's say we go back to our bicep curl example and if we're training people in the gym and we want them to push close to failure, it's certainly true that you have to deal with discomfort, right? Yeah. If I did bicep curls and I never got to the point where it burned or it got hard, I'm probably not promoting muscle growth. But if I push myself globally to the point of pure exhaustion or my body can't recover and I'm stiff and sore all the time, it's usually counterproductive because you're either going to get injured and you're going to kick yourself out of the gym for a while, or you're going to be so sore that you start skipping days. And we know this from both our own experiences and coaching so many people that consistency is the real game.
Oh, for sure. And I would even versus instead of thinking of it as no pain, no gain, I would think of if you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
That'd be the way I'd flip it around.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and
don't kill yourself in the gym.
Exactly.
Please.
Yep. And that's honestly, every time that I've gotten injured, it's because I've told myself that the soreness, to train through the soreness or train through the stiffness, or that I was fine and I could pick up the same weights sore that I could when I was fresh. And that's always when I've hurt myself. Yeah. And so there's
or
a real
kickball.
Or playing kickball. Yeah.
Sorry. If you know, you know.
That hurts. It hurts.
All right. Awkward. Okay, let's go. Actually, so number 10, this kind of curls into the end of what we just talked about. So if you take time away from training, you will lose your gains, or you will not be able to maintain the gains you currently have. Yeah. No, how long did it take you to put on that muscle and for you to put all that work in? Like, you didn't just get jacked in one day. Like, it took a very long time for you to get to the point that you're at. So it's not gonna go away tomorrow if you miss a couple days off the gym, or even a couple weeks. If you're sick, well, heck, if you're sick for a month, you are not going to lose that. Sure, you might come back and you won't be able to maybe lift quite as heavy, but that just means you're getting back into it. It does not mean at all that, like you're trying to rebuild your stamina. It does not mean at all that you've lost all your strength.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think everybody's terrified because when they finally do get in a habit and they see progress and they finally see that thing that was so elusive for some people for so many years, that if you have to take any time off, not only is it like a fear thing where it's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose all the gains, but they do see the changes, right? Like, yes, if you, let's say you had to take a week off because you're sick, like you're going to look in the mirror and your body's just going to look different from two things. One, you're not training, so your body's not going to hold on to as much water. The muscles aren't going to be as pumped up. But two, you're sick. And so your body is diverting resources to try to heal you. And you're not looking or feeling optimal. But you know, the research is very clear on this. Like the amount of volume that you have to do lifting wise to maintain your current muscle mass is like 1/9 of what it takes to build more muscle.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so if you take it that way, it's very small amounts, which I think the general advice I would give most people is like, if you want to maintain the muscle mass you have, as long as you're activating those muscles every once in a while, even if you were to say, let's say you were homesick and you're like, man, I've been working on my chest for like the last 6 months and I'm worried I'm going to lose all my gains. It's like, well, just do like 10 push-ups and let the body know that you're still using that muscle and don't starve yourself of protein and you'll be totally fine.
For sure.
The only times that the body really starts to actually take muscle away or eat muscle is if you're completely starved and your body actually sees it as an emergency maneuver that it has to go and eat muscle mass. Otherwise, it's all just fear mongering.
I think adding with that is what you just said is like, granted, you're not gonna lose, but less is more, right? Coming in with this as well. I don't know why I brought that in. Something you said that triggered in my head. From you saying that it's like 1/9 of the volume that you'd need.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, that kind of goes back even to less is more, rather than training 6 days a week or whatever. That's kind of off topic of this myth, but
yeah.
I'm just putting an awareness point to that.
Yeah, because like your lifting cycle and your lifting journey in life is like so long that it's like, it's not you just build consistently over time on a direct linear ascension. Like it's just not how it is. And so there's just going to be times, sometimes for people, whether it's because of an injury or they just got life stressors or whatever, like sometimes the best thing you can do is still go to the gym, still get movement in, but at a low enough level that you don't stress out your body and you just maintain your muscle mass for a while. And then there's periods of your life where you get everything in line. Your eating's good, your sleep's good, your kids moved out of the house or whatever, and you can like really drive like building more muscle. But we see this all the time with athletes, like former athletes. If somebody comes into our gym and they tell me they haven't worked out for the last 10 years, ever since they were in college sports.
Yep.
Like those people, they that strength and that muscle mass and that memory of it is in their body and they come back so fast. So especially if let's say you're the person that did lift for a significant period of time, you had significant muscle mass, and just like the idea, you've taken so much time off that the idea of getting back into it and feeling like you have to do all that work to get back to it is daunting. Like it'll come back like crazy fast for you.
Yes, and that's true. Like don't let it deter you that, oh, I've been gone for so long, what's the point of going back? I'm never gonna be the way I was.
Yeah.
That's very much not true.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of times you'll come back even better.
Yeah. What else? Anything else? That's all 10 that we wrote down.
That was all 10.
Yeah.
I would say that if you have any myths that you've heard or any at least just questions that you're curious about if it's even a myth or not, hit Nick and I with it.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, like please, this is our first couple episodes of this podcast, so if you can go in and rate it, review it, subscribe to it, if you find this on YouTube and you can leave us a comment, all that stuff helps, not only for feedback for us, like, or if you're just listening to us and you actually see us in person at the gym, let us know that something was useful, because like all that feedback really fuels us. And if you want to hear anything specific, like find a way to contact us and let us know, because we love talking about this stuff and we're just looking for direction from you guys on what actually brings you value. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at MatracaFit, MatracaFit.
Nice. And you can find me on Instagram at Nick, Nick, _, Byom, BYOM. And then everything else for our gym is at Strength Academy RF for our home Instagram page. If you're finding us on YouTube or TikTok, we're at Strength Academy 101. Facebook, it's also, right, at Strength Academy 101? At Strength Academy RF? I don't know.
Pretty sure it's at Strength Academy RF.
Yeah, if you find, you'll find us.
TikTok's back, so you can find us on there again. Woohoo!
Yay.
All right, guys.
She's more psyched than I am about that.
We will see you next week.
Peace out.